Let me bring in Leon Panetta. He's a former director of the CIA, former Secretary of Defense, former White House Chief of Staff, and I think he's participated in an Oktoberfest or two. Leon, it is good to see you. Let me start with the president today and his defense of shooting down the benign objects. It seems pretty clear that in hindsight, they didn't need to be shot down. Is this a case where he doesn't want to look like he overreacted, and they're just, even if they think they did, they're not going to tell us?
Well, I think it was important for the president to come forward and try to clarify the situation as best he could, because there are a lot of rumors, a lot of concerns, a lot of questions about whether there might be a miscalculation here in dealing with these objects in space. So I'm glad that the president came out and addressed the issues. He talked about the three objects. I don't think we know what those objects were all about, because we really haven't found them. I know that intelligence assessment is probably that they're benign, but bottom line is we really don't know. And so it's important to develop these protocols that he's recommending that Secretary Blinken and the national security staff develop in order to at least establish a better process to identify these objects and then determine what steps we should take when we have to deal with them. That's something that I think is desperately needed, because we've kind of done this by the seat of our pants, and it hasn't worked too well.
Let's talk about what he said there, that he wants to work with Xi to develop some system. And, you know, everybody, you know, at the same time, this is not the Cold War. We're not going to do what we did with the Soviets. But when it comes to surveillance and open skies and monitoring weapon systems, why not? I mean, isn't the open skies agreement we had with the Soviets after the Gary Powers incident, isn't that actually the model here?
I think it is. I think it's really important that we try to establish some kind of communication with China. I think the president actually does have a pretty good relationship with President Xi, and I think he's hoping to try to reestablish communication on that issue and be able to kind of clarify what each should do if this happens again. Look, there's no question our relationships are tense, but at the same time, I think it's really important, in order to avoid some kind of crazy miscalculation that could take place, to be able to have an open line between President Biden and President Xi.
What about taking it a step further and, you know, doing what we've done with nuclear agreements with the Soviets and now with Russia, which is to allow for inspections, allow for each country to, you know, have some access to what we're up to?
Well, you know, it would be nice to work towards that end. I think that's going to be tougher to achieve. Even Russia has now backed off of the agreements we made with them. So it's not going to be easy. But at the same time, I really do think, with regards to balloons and what's happening with these balloons, that is an area where I think we actually could make some progress. Look, we know we do surveillance with satellites, we do surveillance with drones, we do surveillance through human intelligence. I'm not quite sure, you know, whether these balloons produce the kind of intelligence that really is necessary. But at the same time, there are a lot of these balloons around. We know that now. China has used them a great deal. So it probably does make some sense to try to develop an approach where each country knows what the other country is doing with regards to these surveillance balloons.
You know, it's interesting you say that. It's my understanding the Chinese sort of was copycatting a program that they thought we were doing.
You know, I think that probably has some basis to it, because they try to copy everything else we do. And there's no question that we've used balloons to be able to observe things, because it allows you to be over a particular target for a longer period of time in order to understand what that target's all about. But China, as usual, has pretty much gone hog wild in developing these balloons. They're all over the place. And this balloon, frankly, as the intelligence people tell us, began by trying to do surveillance over Guam, because Guam is an area that we're building up in order to deal with China. So that's a pretty clear objective on the part of the Chinese. So the issue is going to be whether or not this remains a viable way of gathering intelligence. I think because everybody's aware of it now, because we're going to have these protocols that are going to identify these projects, I think it's going to be much tougher to really be able to use these to gather critical intelligence.
I mean, this is a program that probably is going to go away from that, just because we're too onto them. That's what I think. Right.
That's what I think. I think China actually is very jealous of what we are able to do in terms of being able to send planes along China and be able to gather intelligence while we're in international airspace. They don't like it. They've objected to it. But I think they're struggling to see if somehow in the future they could develop a similar system that doesn't rely on balloons.
Secretary Panetta, always good to have you on. Your wealth of experience and knowledge is always helpful to this situation.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.